Well, hi everyone. I'm John Retlin with an NWA Roundup review. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, I'm going to be doing bite-sized chunk reviews of 3 particular videos that the National Wrestling Alliance put up on their YouTube channel. The rebirth of the modern era of the NWA with Tim Storm and Nick Aldis, that rivalry being the focus. Then going to Tim Storm versus Josephus in an empty arena match, and finishing up with Colt Boom Boom Cabana versus Nick Aldis for the NWA Championship in Shanghai, China. The reason that I'm doing these all sandwiched into one review is I'm very, very busy with plenty of projects, as I'm very busy on this channel, and also I do have a full-time job. I wanted to try and present, my love of NWA wrestling, and also just to talk about the fact that, hey, you guys should check out these videos. It is really cool that NWA is trying to draw more fans in because, yes, Power has been a success. Their pay-per-views have done pretty well, and the Rebirth has actually been a success. And it is nice that they are putting out this content for free and showing us how these rivalries came to be, how wrestlers were even a couple years ago, how much they've evolved. And it's really nice to see that. So, I'm not going to go over all the fine details of this, but I will say that I really enjoyed every single one of these shows, and it was nice to have a deep dive into the backstage, life of these wrestlers and show how much travel and how much passion and energy they put into their craft. It's really, really nice to see. So, I'm going to start off with the modern era rebirth of the NWA, focusing on Nick Aldis versus Tim Storm, and easily one of my favorite programs that NWA has put out, and that's period. That's going back to any of the events that they put up. This modern era of NWA, Billy Corgan's got it. I know he's called William Patrick Corgan, but I'm going to call him Billy Corgan because that's what I've gotten used to calling him. I'm a Smashing Pumpkins fan after all. And this starts in October 2017, and it clips from the 10 Pounds of Gold series, where they really, said, okay, we're going to draw fans in. And they did. And credit to them. They have presented wrestling as it was meant to be. Old school wrestling with a modern twist, brought into the modern age, and they've done pretty damn well with that. Is everything perfect in the NWA? No, but by and large, there have been way more positives than there have been negatives. And just from a fan's perspective, it's refreshing, and I'm so glad to see it. And I love seeing some of my favorites there, and some people that I wasn't fully aware of. I'm like, holy crap, these guys are actually good, or these women are actually good. And now I want to see more of what's going on. So, Tim Storm, they talk about Tim Storm over 20 years in wrestling. They talk about his early years. A year-long run as NWA champion would end up being 414 days. And I'm just going to say this much about Tim Storm. People can say what they want about maybe the NWA championship doesn't feel as prestigious as it used to be. Wrestling has evolved in that case, but those that love and appreciate old school wrestling like Tim Storm does, you can hear in these interview pieces he does, he lives and breathes being the NWA champion, and he would have fit in any goddamn era, in my opinion. He would have fit in the 50s, he would have fit in the 60s, the 70s, because he was that much of a workhorse, and he really is that goddamn good. And same with Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis would be a tremendous traveling NWA champion, if he was back in any era. Like, honestly, him and Tim Storm, Aldis and Storm, perfect, great rivalry, because you have, the old lion, that leader, that man with so much experience that wants to show that he still has it, and Tim Storm does. Age is just a number, and he is proving that. He is dedicated to his craft, and he's a great school teacher, and you can see how much he loves and respects the history of wrestling. You hear from, his wife talks about the fact that he has that, that just perfect recall and everything, because he loves and appreciates it. There's some really good stuff. You see how he met Danny Hodge, and how he had the early stages of his career, wrestled Butch Reed near pretty much at the end of Butch Reed's career. And then classic footage of Race, Terry Funk, and, Ric Flair. And then the build for Aldis and Storm began. But I just really want to say the Tim Storm stuff was phenomenal here. And then we talk about Aldis. And it's really, really cool to see, how Aldis started, and, how he started in his career in TNA, what is now Impact. Then Billy Corgan talks about the history of the NWA, growing up in Chicago. He even had his own wrestling promotion for a bit that he had with other people. Resistance Pro Wrestling, I believe is what it was called. And he talked about his exit from TNA, well, Impact. Thanks, Dixie. You gave birth to the NWA. Good job. Good job. Actually, good job, because I'm glad that Billy Corgan is in charge of this. And Corgan did say at one point, he had this quote, it's like, someone much smarter than me once said, every great journey begins with a step. And we get footage of Aldis in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And that's figured in a whole lot. You got Dave Marquez talking about, the lineage of the NWA Championship. And that's really what it comes down to. That's 70 years of lineage. That's some great shit right there. I mean, and depending on what you believe, there are championships that go back so goddamn far. But the NWA Championship means something. You see that championship. That's wrestling. That is prestige right there. That is something I love as a wrestling fan of 30 plus years. And just a fan. Never been in the ring, but just a fan. But I absolutely love it. If I ever got a chance to hold that championship, during a meet and greet with whoever is holding it at the time, Aldis, Storm, anyway, I would proudly hold that and be like, I am holding something that Ric Flair, so many others held. Just phenomenal. And you can tell Aldis and Storm respect it. So, training footage, we see Aldis' early days. He was TNA champ. He would then leave. He says you have to take yourself seriously. You have to understand your market value. You have to learn to, kind of deal with shit and everything and turn positive or negatives into positives. And you're either winning or learning. And then Tim wants to make his remaining miles count. He knows he's got more miles in the rearview mirror than he has in front of the windshield. And that's good to understand that, but Tim's still got some years left, and you can tell with his style, it's a hard-hitting style, but it's also safe. You can tell that he really, years and years of experience. He understands exactly how to work properly. And we get training montages, we get the video, we get promo packages, we get a whole bunch of stuff. And Storm versus Aldis, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It's a classic match, as you would expect, with some good brawling, some great wrestling. These guys understood how to perform in front of a live studio audience. No, that's not a cliche. They really performed goddamn well. They did some great shit, as you would expect with these guys, and they just had that natural chemistry. They just did. And even though it seemed like Aldis was going to get the victory, Storm kind of, pushes his foot off the rope during an inside cradle spot and gets an inside cradle to get the victory 1, 2, 3. Now, it would not be the last match that they would have, but this piece, about 78 minutes, I believe. This was very well done. It was a good match, given a good amount of time, and it showed how much the NWA Championship meant. It showed this rivalry would continue, but that old lion could stay. He knew a few tricks. That old dog knew a few tricks, and he was going to be able to school Aldis right there. He got one over on him. And I will say this, if Tim Storm is not one of the best pure baby faces in wrestling today, I would like to know who people think is way better outside of maybe one or two. Because Tim Storm honestly is. The guy's fucking phenomenal. Now, that piece is done. We talk about the empty arena match. The Tim Storm Josephus rivalry is January 2018. Because we show a bit of footage of that match of Tim Storm being vicious. And then Josephus and a snake and a spiritual advisor and all this stuff. I admit, having seen Josephus mainly as a joke on NWA Power, it is nice to see how they had him as this, vicious, soft-spoken, but clearly deranged guy that was going to do anything he could get inside your head, however he could, to get what he wanted. And in a CZW show, December 9th, 2017, Storm's 414-day title reign ended. And Aldis began his reign that would end at All In. And then another one would begin again at the 70th anniversary show. But Josephus doing training, nature walks, a lot of VHS tapes had a pop-up of Hulk Hogan from the WrestleMania 3 tape. And then he stalks Tim's family and, like the spiritual advisor, the bald lady that's there. I don't actually know her name. I apologize for that. But Tim was livid, as you would expect. And that's the thing about this rivalry, is it comes across as real because Tim is real. He's just himself with the volume turned up. And it's the old Impact Zone houses this empty arena match. We get a whole bunch of stuff about what's going to happen. It's for an NWA title shot. And Josephus has gotten inside Tim's head, but can Tim focus his rage, or will he just unleash his rage, tire himself out, and will Josephus win? Well, let's find out. Though if you've already seen the match, you already know. This match, it went all over the Impact Zone, in the bleachers, all this stuff with the old Impact Zone. Got all this stuff. A lot of trash talking from Tim Storm. You want to knock my family, this kind of stuff. Don't talk about my family. No, you don't get to say that. It's just beating Josephus up. Beat him up for a good 10 minutes. It was a lot of time that he beat him up. And it was good to see because There was this one thing that factored into an earlier match that they had, actually, where some salve got in Josephus's eyes, and he can see 3% less out of this eye. Now he wants to make Tim's life a living hell, and the salve actually comes back into play a little bit. But at one point, actually, it was kind of funny where before that happened, he threw the what was it? Storm is just throwing a bunch of chairs in and says, "I'm a freaking school teacher." And I don't know why that line made me laugh. It just did. Just picture the school teacher just chucking stuff like a gym teacher or a principal just chucking chairs and saying, "Okay, I'm gonna get you guys to learn one way or another." And it's just really good shit. And then we get ladders and chairs, and Josephus finally gets a low blow and gets the salve in the eyes of Tim. So doing that callback, we get kendo sticks, we get some stuff. We get a ladder at one point was set up between the guardrail and the ring apron, and then another ladder was on the floor. And we get a crutch, we get the salve, it looks like Tim Storm might pull this out, even despite the fact Josephus is coming back, but nope. We get a ladder bump where Tim really took a goddamn serious bump into that ladder and then hit the other ladder on the floor. It's like, ouch, that hurt me. And credit to him for taking that. He took that full force as safely as you could, but boy, he took that full force. And Josephus actually manages to get the win, so he's going to face Nick Aldis, and then he's in a bar celebrating with his spiritual advisor, and then more drunk, and then the video ends. This is a pretty good match, though. Very hard-hitting. It was nice to see this different side of Tim Storm. And then we get Nick Aldis versus Colt Boom Boom Cabana in Shanghai, China, April 14th, 2018. And we see a lot of history. Well, first we see Aldis beating James Ellsworth. Yeah, that happened. Ellsworth, that creep. Ooh. Cabana then is brought out to face Aldis. And we see a lot of footage. He's a former two-time NWA champion. And that was during a time where the NWA was kind of in a state of flux where, yes, you were the NWA champion, but what did it mean? Was the prestige still there? The championship may have had prestige, but did the brand, and the people working on it, promoting with it, like all the promotions working to be part of the new National Wrestling Alliance, was it actually working? And Colt even talked about, the politics and stuff like that and everything, but it still meant a lot to him. And Colt Cabana was actually at the first indie show I ever went to, and it was really cool. I didn't get a chance to meet him. My best friend did, and said he was really nice. I'm sure he was. I mean, Colt, he can work. The frustrating thing about Colt is the comedy stuff at times works, at times doesn't, but he is really goddamn good. He really is. You can tell how skilled he is, and you can tell how much he loves it. And that's the thing. You see so much stuff about him, talking to the fans, how much fans appreciate him from all over the world. One fan had his shirt, and he got it in Australia. And, just the amount of love that he has all over the world. And Nick Aldis has plenty of respect as well. He's not chopped liver. He is a tremendous NWA champion. And they're building up this whole thing where it's a big deal to be in Shanghai, China. It's the first NWA championship match in China, I believe, and it's just goddamn amazing. And Colt is wondering how he's going to entertain this new audience because it's a brand new market. And yes, there's Oriental Wrestling Entertainment, but I'm just saying as far as, OWE with the Strong Hearts and stuff like that. Got to meet Shima, actually. Great guy. Really great guy. I do not understand how he has been able to move so goddamn well after 20 plus years in the ring. But what's great about this is you see rehearsal, they're doing their entrances and stuff like that. And you got Joe Galley and Todd Kenley, I believe was his name, from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And, they run down the brief history and stuff like that. And then we get Nick Aldis versus Colt Boom Boom Cabana. Was this match good? Yeah, it was pretty good. Now, it's a bit weird because it wasn't a very well lit arena or venue or wherever they were. It was very echoey. I don't know if it was set up for something else and never set up for wrestling. Though since they really didn't have that much wrestling in China, I can imagine it was probably set up for other things. But that being said, these two cut a really good pace. There was some good brawling, some great rest hold work, some nice submission trading. These two worked a classic match as you would expect. These two really worked well, and by God, it was some really, really good shit. They encapsulate how an old school NWA championship match can be, brought into a modern age, because you got Colt, who knows the world of sports style, and Nick Aldis, who just has that classic feel that he could work in any era, and just really, it works really well. These two worked really well together. There was this one point where there was a nice superplex by Colt, some big moves, but they made them count. There was this one funny point where they went into the barricade, or Colt went into the barricade, and it was just those fold-out signs. You know, the fold-out signs are like this, and he goes into it, and they just fall over. I mean, it was what it was. I just found that kind of funny that, oh, he went to the barricade, he went into a couple signs, which I'm sure hurt, but it's just they made it seem like he was hitting metal barricades. Yeah, I don't know. It was what it was. But Colt does eventually hit a moonsault, and then goes for the cover, but he goes for the cover like this, where he's on his back, and crucifix pin from Aldis. 1, 2, 3. Aldis retains, and then the fans get some selfies since, you know, the NWA hasn't been back there. I don't really think they've had much wrestling in China, but hey, this was some pretty good stuff. So yeah, that's about 4 hours worth of stuff that I encapsulated in about 15 minutes. But I would encourage you guys to check this stuff out because it was really good shit. Nice video packages, some great interview pieces. The stuff with Tim Storm and Nick Aldis was phenomenal. The stuff with Colt and Aldis was really good as well. And it gave me a newfound appreciation for the Josephus character, as I was unfamiliar with him except being a goof on NWA Power. So it was nice to see where his beginnings really came in the NWA brand, on the NWA brand that is. So it was really, really cool to see. So anyway, guys, let me know what you guys thought of these shows in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.